Hello and welcome back to another episode of Becoming Relentless. I am your host, elenoa.mccabe. I'm an IFBB bikini pro and an online health and fitness coach. And today I am once again just going to go off the cuff stream of consciousness. So we're going to see how that goes. But I did get good feedback from my last episode that I did like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. I wanted to talk a little bit about like changes that I've made, especially if you guys have been following for a really long time. Well, not even a long time, but last year I did a prep, and then the year before that, I also attempted a prep. So there's been a lot of Becoming Relentless episodes where I've been in contest prep, reversing, or like the in between. I haven't really ever taken intentional time off away from the stage. And even when I did take time away from the stage, like the stage was always something that I was pursuing and heavy on my mind. But this year, for the first time in a really, really long time, probably since I started bodybuilding, the stage really isn't on my mind. And it feels really strange to like say that out loud, because for a really long time, I have prided myself on always being so committed to bodybuilding and having it be a goal that I talk about all the time. But I think last year, after going through the prep experience that I did and doing my pro debut, I finally have reflected and realized that while I still love bodybuilding, and I always will, and I'm not going to come on here ever and shit on it, I do think that the priority of bodybuilding has shifted for me a little bit. And I still want to compete in the future. Like, I still have a lot of goals as far as getting on stage and competing on the pro level. I still have like certain milestones I want to hit with that. But for this year, 2025, I have absolutely zero interest in competing at all, which is so strange, because I think I haven't felt that way ever since I started bodybuilding. So that's been really new, and I haven't really been sure how to talk about it. Also, I feel like on my social media, I have taken a little bit of a step back. I'm still on Instagram, but I am not posting a whole lot. I don't feel like I'm having a lot of conversations with you guys because of the season of life that I'm in currently. And I think I wanted to address that and talk about it a little bit. Another thing that I did kind of want to talk about, but I also didn't, is a little bit more on the personal side. Like, I've gone through a lot of changes, even from like November to now. And it's only January, but it literally feels like November was 2 years ago because of all the things that have changed. I have a second job. And if you guys remember way back to when this podcast first started, I had a corporate like remote work from home job. So I was coaching and doing that. But the remote work that I was doing was super flexible. So as long as I got my work done and I like communicated with my people, and they were all in Colorado, everything was fine. Like, they didn't really mind if I went to the gym at lunch, or if I logged off early to go to a show or go record the podcast or whatever it was. This new second job that I have, I started December 2nd, and it's like in office 8 to 5. And I think going in, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't have any like expectations on what it was going to be like. I just knew it was going to be a challenge and it was going to be a change. But something about me is like, I really struggle with being able to like step back and see big picture. Sometimes I'll just be so in the day to day, and like whatever's in front of me is like priority, and that's what matters. And so I think through December and now through like January, I have been really struggling with scheduling routines, like feeling like I have a routine. I have little routines throughout the day, right? Like, I wake up at the same time. I will like do my cardio, go for a walk. Like, I have like a morning and a night routine, and those are like very solid. Those don't really change. But going into an office means that like I have to be a lot more intentional with trying to get my steps through the day, or drinking all of my water. And like, these things that I didn't used to struggle with are now honestly really hard for me to planned into my day, which again is really strange for me to talk about because like as a bodybuilder, those are like what you would call the low hanging fruit. Or like as a coach, that's what I tell people, like, hey, start small. And like the starting small is your water or your steps. And so I feel like me struggling with that is, I don't want to say it's like embarrassing, but it's just like, like I get it now. I get why, you know, moms who have kids and a job and this and that and like are running a household, like I get why y'all say, yeah, I only have 4,000 steps on the day and I don't want to go for a walk at night because same. I get home from the office and I'm like, I don't want to go for a walk right now. It's cold outside. I'm tired. Like I get that it's not necessarily like the lack of motivation because we have our goals and we're motivated for it. It's more so like that discipline muscle or like the practice of doing the thing anyways. It's been harder for me. And I feel like it's been nice because now I understand a little bit better why some of my athletes struggle with these, like, you can call it low hanging fruit, but struggle with some of these things because if you're not intentional throughout your day, if you don't have a certain goal as a priority and you take the steps towards like shifting your lifestyle or like, I guess like making it truly a priority because like I just said, I don't think bodybuilding is my priority this year. So it makes sense why when I get home from the office, I don't want to do things that a bodybuilder would just do naturally. And so having that has been, it's just been weird. It's been a weird month and I'm still trying to figure it out. And I find myself saying to my friends and stuff, like, I just need to get in routine. Like, I just need to find a schedule that I'll stick to. And it's not necessarily that because every day of mine looks different and I don't like it, but I'm going to have to just kind of deal with it. Like, for example, the job that I'm working, it's a tech sales and I'm cold calling. So I spend the majority of my day like sitting at a desk, calling people, talking to people. It takes a lot of emotional energy. And so then like afterwards, wanting to like, I want to talk to my athletes. I want to make sure that their questions get answered. And then by the time I get home, all of the energy is just gone. Like I don't have any energy for me. And then the other thing that I'm trying to do right now is like prioritize friendships. So I've been like scheduling calls with my friends, which I love, but now it's like, okay, I've spent the whole day on the phone. And then now I'm going to go like work out or I'm going to go for a walk and it's 30 degrees outside. No, I'm not going to do that. So it's just been a very odd time in my life. But I do think as I've gotten more in like relaxed into this office role and I've kind of understood the part that it's going to play in my life, I am starting to like craft a better quote unquote schedule or routine and just being okay with knowing that like, hey, some days are going to go exactly according to plan and then some days are not. And that's okay. So yeah, a little bit of like personal update. I don't know if that is helpful or relevant for everyone, but like, I understand if you work an office job and you're pursuing bodybuilding, I get it. It's hard, especially when you have like multiple things going on in your life. So, the other thing that I did want to talk about today is a topic that has been requested from me previously. And I haven't wanted to talk about it because I personally don't struggle with it. And I know that sounds kind of selfish probably, but there is a part of me that kind of let me take that back. I'm not going to sit here and like try and pass judgment. I don't particularly struggle with this. So I didn't understand the relevance of it, but I've gotten the question more and more. So I'm going to talk about bulking and like why some people struggle with bulking. And I think for me, I've never had that struggle because I actually have like the opposite side of the coin issue where like I'm always hungry. Like I can always eat. I don't ever not want to eat. I'll eat a meal and I'll still be hungry, or I'll go out to dinner and I'll want a second dinner. Like there's not really a point for me where I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm not hungry. Food sounds gross. I don't want to eat anything. Because even when I'm stressed, I generally will want to turn to food. Like it's very, very rare that I don't want food. So when I get athletes who ask me, or even like DMs on Instagram where they're like, I really struggle with getting all my meals in, or I struggle with growing and bulking. Sometimes I feel like there's various issues here, but sometimes I think the root issue genuinely is that you have not eaten enough for a long time. So your stomach is not used to taking in that amount of food that's necessary to grow. And then the other side is that I also think, especially for women, a large part of like food and eating ties into like our body image and how we feel about how we look. And especially within bodybuilding, that gets amplified because if you do a contest prep, you're going to lose 15 to 20 pounds. And contest prep is usually 6 months. So in 6 months, you're going to lose 20 pounds and then you're expected to then gain it all back. Like so many people are going to struggle with that. It just makes sense. Like when you say it like that, obviously you're going to struggle. And so I think when it comes to like getting feedback that like, oh, I need to grow muscle, everybody will say, like on Instagram, coaches will be like, you got to eat to grow, or like eat to fuel your muscle, eat to fuel your performance. And like, yeah, those are good catchphrases to say, but like the actual execution of eating more, I do think people struggle with if they don't actually want to get bigger. Because when you're trying to gain muscle, when you're trying to grow, you can't just only decide I'm only going to put muscle on. Like it doesn't work that way. You have to also put body fat on, and you're going to get bigger in places that you don't want, like your stomach, your arms, your face. You can't control that. But if the goal is important enough to you, it doesn't matter in the short term. Like gaining that weight and growing and pushing hard, like, and essentially force feeding sometimes, like, yeah, in the moment that's uncomfortable, but if you push through the discomfort, you're getting closer to your goals. So I think that's why, like previously, I've struggled with answering that question because I don't understand it personally, but I do understand it from like an outside perspective. Like I understand that overeating is uncomfortable. Like we've all overeat, especially like through the holidays. You probably overate at dinner or something. It doesn't feel good to have your stomach overly full and you get really tired and fatigued. Like your brain function probably isn't very good. But when you are pursuing a goal like bodybuilding and you have a coach who's like putting you through a bulk, there are metrics and biofeedback in place that's going to make sure that you're not just like overshooting. Like the goal isn't to put on 40 pounds with 30 pounds of it being body fat. Like that's not useful. You can bulk and you can grow in a way that is slow and controlled and over time if you allow that to happen. So I guess like some of the tips that I did want to talk about as far as like struggling to grow, there's a few things that you can do to make the process a little bit easier on yourself. So I know we talked the most recent episode I did was about environment and how that affects you. Your environment when you eat like also affects you. So if you struggle with eating enough of your meals through the day, like I would look at your environment and I would treat your meals like something, instead of it being a chore, like, oh, I have to eat another meal, or like reframe it as something that is enhancing your gym performance or it's getting you closer to your goal. You can create a routine or a habit with eating that makes it more enjoyable. Cause that's the biggest thing I hear too, is like eating 4 meals or 5 meals a day isn't enjoyable. And a lot of us eat food because it is enjoyable. Like food is really good and it gives us a dopamine hit. But if you're constantly like trying to overeat and bulk and grow, food can become not that fun. So I would try and like make your environment and make your routine a little bit more fun. And I know that, so I've said this before in a different podcast, like if you have digestive issues or if you struggle with always feeling hungry, don't do this. But if you're trying to bulk right now and you're struggling with growing and getting all your meals in, eat in front of a screen. And I hate to even recommend that, but like when you're watching TV, you're not thinking about eating. And it's way easier to sit and watch a TV show and clean your plate and not even really think or feel it. Versus like if you're in prep, don't do that because you're going to be so hungry. And that's why I also say like if you struggle with digestive issues, don't do that because you're not being mindful and you're not thinking about what you're eating. that's why it's kind of a tip, but it's also not a tip. So I would use that one with your discretion, like eating in front of the TV or watching your favorite show, making the process of eating food a little bit more fun can be helpful when you're trying to grow and when you feel like you're force feeding. Another thing that you can do is liquid calories. So again, like the flip side of all the dieting tips that you hear are the bulking tips. So, when you're dieting, people are like, oh, watch your liquid calories. Like that's an easy way to cut calories. Okay. Well, an easy way to add calories back in is liquid. So things like coffee creamer, like smoothies, so like blending up like fruit, but then also adding calorie dense things like oatmeal or coconut oil, like oils, fats. Those are really great ways to add in sneaky calories without actually feeling full. So when you're trying to bulk, use like those things at your disposal. So all of the dieting tips that you've ever heard in your life, reverse it for bulking. So trail mix, like a handful of that is way more calorically dense than a plate of food. So have those things ready. Dried fruit, those are like full of carbs, really easy to eat. Like a whole bag of that would probably be like my daily's worth of carbs right now. So I would take all of the things you've ever been told about how to diet effectively and just reverse it for the bulk. Another thing that you could do is depending on your digestion. So again, another tip that's kind of like discretion advised, smaller, more frequent meals. So personally, I don't like eating more than 4 meals a day, and that's a personal choice. I just think it's annoying to have to like space out and eat 6 meals in a day. That's just kind of, it just doesn't fit my personal lifestyle. But I know other bodybuilders, other bikini girls who love their small, like 6 meals a day. They'll start at 7 a.m. and they'll end at like 7 p.m. and they have their little meals every 2.5 hours. And they love that. That's actually a really good way for you to add more calories in as well, having more frequent meals and high calorie snacks in those meals. Another thing, like don't eat alone. So whenever you go out to eat with your friends, like it's really easy to order out and like eat and then not really feel full, right? Like whenever I go out to eat, I feel like I'm never really full. Like leaving dinner, I'm always like, okay, dessert time. And I think not eating alone can help you eat more, because if you're being social, again, it's kind of like the mindfulness versus the not mindfulness. So all of these tips, really, I would just use your own discretion. Like have some self-awareness. If you know that these would be helpful for you, go for it. If you're like, yeah, no, I don't think that I should be mindlessly eating, totally up to you, your choice. The other thing that I can suggest, like some other small tips, would be like using mindset to reset the way that fullness feels. So again, like I think a lot of us, we were told growing up, like, don't feel like you don't have to feel full. I was always told that like the most healthy way to know like when you're done eating is if you're like 85% full, because you never want to get to the point of being like overly full. When you're bulking, you're most likely going to feel overly full almost every time that you eat. So like reframing that fullness and then using little tools at your disposal. So like eat your meal and then get up and go for a walk, and like don't let that feeling just kind of sit. And like reframe it in your mind as like, okay, I'm feeling really full. Like I'm trying to grow. I'm getting closer to my goals, or even like switching it into being thankful and like expressing gratitude that like you get to feel full and you get to pursue a sport that allows you to like overeat in a way. And I don't know, the way that I just said that sounds strange, but in my head, it makes sense. So hopefully it makes sense for you. But like being grateful that this sport is something that allows you to choose to diet or choose to, in a sense, overeat. Like that's a wild thing that we get to choose. Like it's a privilege to bodybuild, and it always has been. And this sport is like, it is a very extreme sport. But if you lose sight of like, hey, I'm actually choosing to put my body through this, and I'm grateful for that choice, and I'm grateful for even the opportunities that I have to like go buy groceries, like almost breaking it down and then being grateful for those things, I think can also help in keeping your mindset from being like too negative, or from preventing yourself from like going through and falling through on the bulk. Some other things, like, again, I think that gut health always has to be number one. And with bodybuilders, like, because of how extreme the sport is, typically our gut health is going to be somewhat compromised over time. Like, a lot of competitors and a lot of like women that I work with who aren't competitors, but they just live a very stressful lifestyle, your digestion becomes impacted by that. And so if you're trying to grow, but you're struggling in knowing whether or not the food that you're eating is actually getting utilized, like if you struggle with bloating, like acid reflux, heartburn, being gassy all the time, whether you're burping all the time or like the other option, if you feel like you don't go to the bathroom regularly or you go too much or it like fluctuates a ton and there's just like no consistency with it, if your digestion's impacted, then you probably don't want to just like push a bulk and you don't want to force trying to grow. You want to fix the digestive issues first. And that's actually a conversation that I've had a lot with people because you want to get on stage, you want to bodybuild, you want to do the thing. If your gut health is not good, this process is going to be that much harder because trying to get stage lean, if you have a GI issue, is close to impossible. And then the same thing with trying to grow muscle. If your body, if your digestive system, your GI tract is not able to absorb the nutrients that you're eating and it's just going to waste or it's just sitting in your intestines fermenting, like that's not going to help you build muscle either. So sometimes understanding like where you're at and the phase that you need to go through specifically, like that can also be a factor. So if you're struggling to grow or you're struggling to bulk because you're never really hungry, like, or everything that you eat causes bloating, those are like root issues that you need to figure out. Like those are things that you need to dig into and investigate and fix and optimize first so that you can effectively do the thing that you're trying to do. Sometimes like I like using digestive enzymes, berberine, sometimes like herbal teas, like those things, if it's like a one-off situation, those things can help with your digestion in the short term, but you shouldn't be relying on those just to like have a normal digestive process. If you're also if you're struggling to bulk, like activity. So the flip side of this coin is like, you can't just like eat and expect for your body to put on muscle. Like you also then have to go to the gym and train as hard as you possibly can every single time to like push performance. So at the beginning of this topic, like I think I said, there's certain metrics like as coaches that we look for when we are putting somebody through a bulk or when we're trying to help you grow. And one of the most important metrics is training. Because there is a point, like if you're overeating, but your performance, and when I say overeating, I mean like if you're in a calorie surplus, but your performance in the gym is not improving, that tells me that we're probably eating in a surplus and putting on body fat and we're not putting on muscle because your training performance needs to directly increase with the food that you're eating. And there is a point where you can be eating too much food and your performance declines. So that's why it is so important to like track everything, tracking your training, tracking if you're progressing and seeing over time, like especially if the scale is going up like month to month to month, okay, that means that your lifts should be as well. And of course, like we will have our off days, like you're going to have days where your strength isn't there. That's fine, but it shouldn't be like that week over week over week. So making sure that the other components are in place too is important so that the growth isn't just like, oh yeah, I'm getting big and you're just getting fat. Like you should also be training, sleeping, recovering, the low-hanging fruit, like hitting your steps, drinking your water, doing your cardio, even in the off season, even in a bulk, cardio is still important because your heart is a muscle too. Those are all things that also need to be in place. And I think sometimes we get so hyper fixated on like one aspect that it's hard to understand that it's everything as a whole. Like you have to zoom out and look at the big picture. And like I said at the beginning, I struggle with that in areas of my life too. So I get it. But that's why also having a coach through these different phases can be so helpful because they will take the thinking out of it. That way you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to overthink about it. You just follow the plan, give them your data, and they will tell you what to do. So shameless plug, if you're looking for a coach, if you've been struggling to grow, or if you are looking to work with a coach in general, I am taking on new clients. I will be capping my team at a certain amount because, again, like I'm working 2 jobs and I feel like quality of my coaching is more important to me than quantity, but I do still have open spots. So if you want to work with me, the information is going to be in the info box below. But I think I am going to wrap this podcast up. I feel like there was a lot of random things that I talked about, but also I did want to address the like struggling to bulk question. So hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have any like follow-up questions, or if you want me to talk more in depth about things like this, just let me know. I definitely can. But as always, thank you guys for listening. If you liked this, like, share, subscribe, send it to a friend. It helps me out a ton. And until next time, stay relentless.